President Donald Trump's first 100 days are now behind him, but if you listen to the mainstream media, it was the worst 100 days in human history. So, of course, we're starting to see the Democrats come out in conjunction with the mainstream media and have all of these horror stories about what's happening in America. All of these polls coming out trying to sway public opinion, all in an effort to, of course, discredit Donald Trump's second term as president. So what we're going to see today, of course, is Markwayne Mullin really taking Kaitlan Collins over on CNN to task over spreading these false narratives. But before we get to these clips, don't forget to like and comment on this video so we can break the algorithms. Here we go.
And it's great to have you here. Obviously, you're a huge ally of the president. And now that he's 100 days in, and the economy seems to be a major focus for a lot of voters as they're looking at this. In that interview tonight, he talked about the 145% tariffs in place on China. He said he thinks China will actually end up eating most of that. Is that how you see it, though?
Well, I do. I think China has to have us. If you start looking at the economy is strong. Kaitlan, I know the voters are looking at it. You got to remember, underneath President Biden's 4 years in office, he averaged inflation at 4.95%, nearly 5%, at a high of 9.1%. Today, inflation is down to 2.4%. You start talking about optimism inside the economy. We have 229,000 jobs created. 459,000 jobs went from part-time to full-time. We have private investment of $2 trillion that have been pledged to invest in the United States in the first 100 days of the presidency. We have foreign investments of $3 trillion. That's $5 trillion invested in our economy just in the first 100 days. People like to see what is going on right now. You have gas prices down 22%. And when you start talking to American people, they are excited about where our country is headed.
But if the numbers are as good as the president says they are, I mean, he's wildly exaggerating how much eggs are down. They're not down 87%. If they were, people would be paying 50 cents for a dozen of eggs, which obviously you know that they're not.
The fact is they're down. And as I said, at the height...
Right, but why not just say exactly how much they're down?
Well, at the height, it was 9.1%. So it depends on what metric you're using. At 9.1%, they're down to 2.4% now. Inflation, that is a significant drop. That's not 50%. You're getting down to actual real numbers at that point. So it depends on which point you're talking about. We can discuss wherever we want to on the eggs of what source you want to say or at what time frame he may be referring to. The fact is, prices are down, and we see them.
But they're not down as
dropping.
much as he's saying that they're down for eggs. So I'm saying if my
so let's use the math. What's 9.1% down to 2.4%? What's the percentage?
I'm saying if the numbers are as good as you think they are, and as you're arguing, and that's number from the agriculture department. Why not just say they're down 52% or 53% instead of 87%?
It's interesting to me that we're focused on the price of eggs when we know it's down. What I don't remember hearing is when Biden was in office and inflation was 9.1%, about you talking about how high the prices were, or anybody, for that matter, actually saying, okay, why is inflation at 9.1%? Why are we averaging 4.95, nearly 5% of inflation? Why is it in the first 100 days? That should be the conversation. Why is it in the first 100 days that the president was able to bring down inflation to 2.4% and have $5 trillion of investment inside the United States? Why wasn't that happening in the last 4 years of the Biden administration?
I think if you asked anyone in the Biden White House, they got asked about inflation all day long. It was essentially one of the only questions reporters asked them. So I don't think that that's a fair criticism. But on the numbers, when you're looking at that, you know, this isn't some criticism from the media. It's the polling that voters are not happy with where the economy's going. They don't feel good about the president's policies, and they think they're making the economy worse. Why do you think that is?
Well, I would go, what demographic are they polling? Who are they talking to? Because when I'm talking to people in Oklahoma, or I'm talking to people in Texas, or I'm talking to people in Alabama, or wherever I'm traveling to, which granted I'm traveling to red states, they're very optimistic about where we're headed to. They're excited about what's happening inside the country. And I think investors are that way too, as I go back to it. In the first 100 days, we've had $5 trillion pledged to invest inside the United States. Why weren't they doing that underneath the Biden administration?
Yeah, I mean, I looked at the CNN polling. It was, I think, the sample that they surveyed was more Republicans than it was Democrats, and then a lot of independents in there as well. I mean, it was a pretty broad swath. And it's also not just the CNN poll. It's the ABC Washington Post poll. There's a Fox News poll that's out where his numbers are down. And so I guess the question is, when you look at that, is there any sense when you look at those numbers that the White House needs to change course?
Kaitlan, numbers don't lie. Polling, you can skew however you want to. When I restate these numbers again, inflation is down to 2.4%, where an average of 4.95 5% underneath the Biden administration.
Yeah, inflation is down.
9.1%. I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but when you have $5 trillion pledged of investment in the first 100 days, I believe the investors, I believe the job creators, those that create the jobs, that hire the individuals, I think it speaks for themselves. When you have 459,000 jobs that were part-time just 100 days ago, today they're full-time, I believe the economy is moving in the right direction. And so we should be talking about what has happened in the first 100 days. Why is it that the President Trump was able to do this and Biden couldn't?
Yes, that is exactly the way to put it. Why in the world is all this good economic news happening under Donald Trump when it wasn't happening under Joe Biden? Because Donald Trump actually wants to help America. So a few changes in policies and all of a sudden, bam, good things are happening. You have jobs being created in the tune of hundreds of thousands. You have investments coming into this country to the tune of billions and trillions of dollars. You have inflation dropping like a stone. You have gas prices coming down. And of course, the price of eggs has decreased. But none of that is good enough for Kaitlan Collins. Why is Donald Trump exaggerating the drop in price of eggs? Because he's a salesman. Do you want to say it came down 50%? Or do you want to say we had an 87% decrease from the rate of increase, right? Which number sounds better? Donald Trump is a salesman. And of course, he wants to go with the best presentation possible. But that's something Kaitlan Collins doesn't understand, especially when it comes to polling, right? Donald Trump isn't doing so well in all of these polls that we're manipulating in order to try to make him look worse than we actually are. And Markwayne Mullin actually brings up a very good point. If you think about any Trump voter you know in your life, are they really disappointed in what Trump is doing right now? No, of course not, right? As I pointed out yesterday, we had a Rasmussen poll that showed that Donald Trump was at 47% approval. And I trust that poll above anything that CNN or Ipsos or Reuters are going to put out because Rasmussen was much more accurate. So after all of their attacks, all of their fear mongering, they're only able to get him down to 47% approval, supposedly. But of course, that means that the base widely approves of what he's actually doing. And as a matter of fact, Donald Trump is not the one in trouble here. It's the Democrats and the Democrat Party because they're polling at about 30% approval among their own base. So of course, who are you going to back right now? The person who's actually bringing back economic prosperity and is being hammered by every single thing the media can throw at him and still is at 47% approval, or the Democrats, the left stream media, who everyone disagrees with on pretty much everything, who is polling in the toilet, who no one trusts on any issue. I know which side I'm on because I like prosperity, rule of law, and safety. So thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and say hi to your mom for me.